Hello, everybody,
Hello.
and welcome to another episode of Credits Book Club Podcast, the last episode of the year of our first fiscal year.
That's right.
Not an entire year,
No,
because I looked
just a
into it.
business one.
I looked into it, and we started in July
Mm-hmm.
with Court of Thorns and Roses,
A lifetime ago.
and really, I have started measuring my life in pre Thorns and Roses and post,
Yeah, same, honestly.
because it was such a bad book, but a
It was the
great one.
wrong
Go ahead.
it was the wrong kind of life-changing experience.
Yeah, a terrible book to read, but a great book to start the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, we did The Last Kingdom, um, by
Bernard Cornwell?
Bernard I knew Cornwall was the last name. I couldn't remember his first
Yeah.
name.
In my mind it's Bernard, but I know that's not true.
Yeah, he is a Britishman.
Yeah. What was after that? Was it differently Morphous after that?
It was. Which is when we started doing the 4 episodes per book, because we realized that The Last Kingdom was way too much to pack into like 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, because we talked about Thorns and Roses for just one episode, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and
and
also Last Kingdom as
right, yeah.
well. After that, we talked with Conky about Dune.
Mhm.
Then we did Kingdom of the Wicked,
Mhm.
and then we talked to Colt about Three Body,
That
and
happened.
see with Black Echo, and here we are. It's only been like 5 books, but it's been like 8-9 months.
Yeah.
Feels good though.
Mhm.
This week, however, we started Killing Floor by Lee Child. Or just Killing Floor. I don't think there's a the
I think it's just Killing Floor too, because I kept getting tripped up by it.
in. But it's the first book in the forever, much like Harry Bosch. Jack Reacher is a forever long series. I believe this book came out in 1997. There have since been plus, be less.
Shit. I didn't know that there were that many.
There's a lot. Jack Reacher been around a while.
How old is Lee Child?
That's a great question that I don't have.
Oh my God, he looks like my boss's boss.
He also
Like,
kind of
almost
vaguely looks
exactly.
like how Jack Reacher is described in this.
Yeah, good point. Little bit of a self-insert. He doesn't look as old as I thought he would. He's only 67 years old. I thought he'd be like a
Follow
million
the
by
leader.
now.
1, 2, 3.
Why? For no reason being like grounded in
She
logic.
may be trapped.
I could have sworn I turned alerts. Anyway, yeah, like he's been writing this character. Like this book came out in '97, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
and only last year, the year before, he's like, "Hey, I'm retiring from writing Jack Reacher, but I'm going to hand over the continuation of the character to like my brother-in-law or something."
Really?
So Jack Reacher will continue. It just won't be Lee Child writing it.
Would you be able to do that with a character, like a book that you'd written, just like hand it over?
Depends. If I had gotten everything I wanted to out of the character, then I can't imagine why I wouldn't be able to just be like, have fun with it. I've had my fun with it. Go on
Mhm.
and go have your fun with him. But as someone who's starting to write a book about a character that I feel very strongly about, oh, I could never.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd be able to relinquish that like that level of control.
Although it could be fun to see what someone else does
Mhm.
with
But
it.
also, like, why couldn't they come up with their own character, an idea?
True.
Why does it have to be like, if there's 20 books with Jack Reacher, like, wrap it up.
Yeah, or I mean, what what a wild gift, because Jack Reacher books sell exceedingly well every time.
True. True.
So you're essentially just handing a cash cow to someone.
Yeah,
Go
that's a
forth
good
and
point.
create money.
Yeah. And maybe he's, like, helped with some of the books or, like, has been privy to, like, his writing process or has edited for him or,
Oh,
like, knows the character quite well.
I would
He must.
imagine, yeah, I would imagine that he wouldn't be handing it over to his brother-in-law or without
Like
like knowing that he'll take care of it at least.
like an estranged family member, "Here you go."
Have fun. So we read the first 8 chapters going floor, where we're introduced to Jack, which sounds weird, so I'll call him Reach.
Okay. It sounds weird. Why does it sound weird to call him Jack?
Because Jack is when I think of the name Jack, I think of Jack Ryan. And
Okay,
Jack Reacher is not Jack Ryan
right.
in any stretch,
No.
except they used to be in the military.
Yeah.
But the book starts out with Reacher walking into a diner and ordering himself breakfast,
Yeah.
and then
After
promptly
walking all night in
getting
the rain.
then promptly getting arrested at gunpoint
For murder.
for murder.
Mhm.
And
And
Jack Reacher is described as a 6'5", 250-pound blonde man, and he doesn't have a care in the world. Like 3 guns are pointed at him, and he's just like, "I'm trying to eat breakfast."
yeah, he's completely nonplussed. Like, he's not anxious at all. He just seems, like, moderately inconvenienced. Like, he doesn't even seem upset about it. He's just like, "Come on,
Yeah,
guys.
this is really
Now?"
putting a damper in my day.
Yeah. "I've been walking all night in the rain, and I just wanna have some coffee."
He likes coffee.
Mhm. Okay, but I have to say a little note on the narrator for this book because
Oh
he's
yeah.
incredible and he just feels like he's your eccentric grandpa telling you a story.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when I was listening to this chapter, I was out for a walk. And when he starts doing he gets really into the like police arresting soundscape that he creates. Like he starts shouting into his mic and doesn't really have a ton of like noise gate controls set up for himself. So like it's all of a sudden this man is yelling like police and I jumped in the middle of the street looking like an insane person, like someone had started yelling at me even though I knew I was listening to a book. I just had my headphones in, but it looked probably like a ghost walked through me or something.
Yeah.
I was so embarrassed.
The narrator is great. He's so delightful. He gives everybody a nice little personality.
Mhm.
Reacher, he has a great, like, he gives him this great laissez faire, like, lackadaisical attitude, which is
Mhm.
really great.
Mhm.
He doesn't care about and he like every problem that he faces, Reacher, everything that he has to deal with in the 8 chapters that we read, he's just like, all right,
Yeah.
let's get this over with. But he's I believe the first chapter is the entirety of the first chapter is him getting arrested.
Yeah, basically, like, he gets arrested and he's being taken to the police station. He's like, "Well, I'm not worried because
I didn't do
I haven't
anything.
killed anybody in a long time or
Yeah,
in this town, so, there's nothing that they can prove. So, I guess we'll just get this over with."
yeah,
And
can't
that's the
prove
entirety
something
of
that
it.
didn't happen.
Yeah.
But then in chapter 2, he's at the police station, and that's when they start like they try to squeeze a confession out of him. He's just like, I didn't do anything wrong, so I don't know what you're hoping for here, but you guys can stuff it. Also,
Yeah.
I couldn't have done it.
Mhm. He's more concerned with trying to figure out if, like, the hot lady taking his photos and his fingerprints is single or not
Yeah.
than he is about proving his innocence to this murder he definitely didn't commit.
And in one the slightest briefest moment of I was like, ooh, that didn't age. Oh,
Mhm.
is Preacher talking about this woman's tits.
Yeah. He's like, I wanted to look at her name tag, but I didn't want her to think that I was looking at her tits, but then he does anyways, and he's like, "Nice
Nice.
tits."
Yeah.
It's like, "Alright, I guess. We needed to hear it."
But it's hard to sort of describe what's appealing about Jack Reacher as we talk about it because you kind of have to just read it. Like he's got that Sherlock Holmes-ness where he can look at somebody and tell 15 different things about them
Mhm.
based on how they dress, how they hold themselves. And he has a lot of those interactions in the police station while he's getting interrogated where he's like
Yeah.
sizing up the detective, like how he managed to plus out how he's from Boston originally. He went to Harvard based on how
Mhm.
he's recently divorced because of the Harvard clothes he's still wearing. That he
Right.
couldn't be bothered to buy a new suit because his wife had
Mhm.
left him, so she wasn't there to buy him new clothes. It's really neat,
Yeah,
but
I
it's
think
hard
what
to talk about outside of reading it yourself. So go read it.
yeah. Yeah, definitely read it. I was really unsure about how I would take to this book. Um, I always am with books that are grounded in reality. I don't know why. It takes me more to, like, get on board with them.
Right.
But something about this book, I think it's because Jack is an easy protagonist to vibe with, for lack of a better word, because, like, he isn't trying to prove himself to anybody, and so you don't feel this, like, urgency to communicate how great he is. The
Right.
same way you get it from a lot of the protagonists in books we've read this year. Like, there's no need for validation from himself or anyone around him,
Yeah.
and it makes it, like, a very easy experience to be with him experiencing the story because of that. 'Cause he knows his training, he knows what his experience is, but he's not yelling it at everybody around him the way that, like, the detectives are yelling at him about how he definitely murdered someone.
Yeah. And he it's hard to explain because in the course of him being interrogated, he says he couldn't have done it because he only just arrived in town like when the murder occurred.
Mhm.
And then we get the backstory into how when Jack Reacher left the military, he just started wandering the earth. He decided that he was, because ostensibly he never really set foot in America
True.
because he was born in military bases, because he's from a military family.
Mhm.
I believe he was born in West Germany,
That's right, yeah.
around a bunch, so he was never really in America, despite being American.
Mhm.
So once he left the military, it was he wanted to see what all the fuss was about, essentially.
Yeah.
So he's
He's just
been just like hoboing it up around America for
yeah,
fun.
one Greyhound bus at a time.
Yeah, and he doesn't have any credit cards. He doesn't have a cell
No.
phone.
Absolutely. He loves like he talks about not leaving a paper trail, but it's not from like any sense of paranoia. It's like he thinks it's fun to like
Yeah,
show up at places and like give a fake name and like it just like brings like novelty to his life.
yeah, he loves the idea of being the drifter,
Yeah.
wandering into town, paying for everything in cash,
Mhm.
having one pair of clothes.
But like, okay, the chief of police is so aggressive to him immediately for no reason. Like, Jack describes him as his arteries are as hard as rocks, like, and he just
Yeah.
starts talking about, like, how fat this dude is, and he's like, "You're gonna give me a full confession to my chief of detectives right now, and then I'm gonna put you in the electric chair, and then I am literally gonna shit on your grave." Like, he just is, like, so violent towards this dude,
Yeah, and
and I don't
there's
know
also
why.
that moment when they first bring in Reacher to the police station. He's the chief of police, or is it chief of detectives? Doesn't matter. It is a chief of some sort.
Mhm. One of the
And he
chiefs.
he looks at Reacher and he goes, "I recognize you from somewhere."
Oh, yeah, that was, like, the police chief, I think.
Yeah, the fatso guy.
Mhm.
And over the course of the interrogation, they talk about how Jack couldn't have, or Jack Reacher couldn't have been there. And he's like, "Because I just arrived in town. I spent the entire time that this crime occurred on a Greyhound bus, and also like 3 hours walking a 14-mile highway." So,
Yeah, in the rain in the middle of the night for reasons undisclosed.
and then just as the just as Reacher's about to like convince the detective interrogating him that there's no way he could have done this, the fat chief is like, "Oh yeah, I saw that we had eyewitnesses that this man was lurking around the crime scene."
Yeah, and he was the eyewitness.
Yeah, and he was the eyewitness. And Reacher's like, "That's not possible."
Yeah, but,
So,
they're like, "You're going to prison for the weekend."
yeah.
Like, everything hinges on like, they're so excited to send Jack to the prison for the weekend.
Hmm.
With for under on no grounds.
Right. Granted, they have arrested him for murder, so they have a few days leeway before they have to like prove it.
Right.
Also, he's completely waived his right to a lawyer,
Right.
and he gets thrown into the little holding cell that they've got there at the police station.
Mhm.
Also, I forgot an important. They keep grilling him about what pluribus,
Right.
and pluribus as in like the word that's on the back of the quarter. E pluribus, whatever. Who's a what's it? Is it on the back of a money? but it's, e pluribus something or other is on American currency.
Mhm.
A form of currency. I'm not sure which one. But they keep asking me what it means. And he's just like, I don't know. Like, look, man, I didn't do it. So what do you want from me?
Have they told him like how the murder, like who was murdered and how yet?
They told him that somebody was murdered and like shot in the head and then the ever
Mhm.
loving shit kicked out of the corpse.
Right. And that's why they're all like, "You're a real sick guy, aren't you, Jack?" And,
Yeah.
he's like, I was in Tampa." That's all he keeps saying is that he was getting on the Greyhound in Tampa at midnight.
Yeah. And one of my notes is who wants to fuck up Reacher's day so bad? Unless
Mhm.
it just happens that, you know, he happens to look like the perfect scapegoat, like some dude who wandered into town, so they're like, he'll work great for this frame up.
Yeah, and I didn't he, like, match the description that was given by the so-called eyewitness,
Yeah.
uh, to a T?
Yeah, of
And so
course.
was that actually just provided by, like, the chief of police
Hmm.
after the fact?
Yeah, after they had already brought him in, they were like, hey, it
Okay,
just so happens that you look exactly like the guy.
right. Okay, right, so this is okay, so that's basically the end of chapter 2,
Chapter
like,
3.
that's right. Okay, and the chief of detectives, his name is Finley,
Right.
and he's the guy who's just, like, kind of bumbling through this whole interrogation, like
Yeah. Like, in a way, Reacher seems to have a kind of respect for him, but
mhm.
he has it all wrong.
Yeah, because they're, like, trying so hard to pigeonhole Jack into this crime that makes no sense. He's like, "Okay, so you're saying that, like, I would have to show up careful like, the guy was shot in the head from, like with a like, precisely done, like, by someone who knew what he was doing, and then it was done very clean, and then all of a sudden, he would just have to, like, change his personality completely to beat the shit out of this guy,
Yeah.
and then change his personality again completely to haphazardly hide the body." So Jack's telling this detective this was definitely done by 3 guys. And so he's like, "Which so there's no way I could have done this crime, or which one of the 3 am I?"
Right.
And Finley's like, "Fuck you," but then ends up using, like, that story Jack tells him. He's like, "Well, you convinced me that there were 3 guys, so you
Yeah.
had to be one of them." And he's like, "It's not what I meant."
Yeah, it's definitely one of those, because I think my note for that was because he was like, if this was done, it was done by at least 3 people. If that's the
Mhm.
case, which one do you imagine I am? And my
Yeah.
note was Reacher literally talks himself out of being, or talks himself back into being a suspect.
Yeah.
Because he almost had Finley convinced that it could never have been him.
Yeah.
And then as soon as he said that, Finley's like, so it was you.
Yeah, he's like, "I don't have 2 friends or a car." And they keep grilling him about, like, a mobile phone. I think
Hmm.
because he is it because they find the number?
Yeah, they find the number of that Hubble guy in the dead man's shoe.
Right, and then they decide to call the number, and, like, Jack's like, "Just call it, pussy, like, just do it, see what happens." And Finley's like, "Whoa, what do I say? I don't know, what do I even say?"
Yeah, like he's doing a
And it
prank call or something.
Yeah, and the way that he frames it, he's like, hello, this is the phone company calling, the mobile division of the phone company calling." And it's, like, the least convincing lie of all time, but this guy just eats it up anyways. He's like, "Oh." And they're basically just doing the, like, "Can you hear me now?" test for the entire conversation, and he immediately asks him to start providing his full address because they're trying to track this guy down. Like,
Yeah.
it's the least smooth, like, attempt to get information out of somebody, but this guy, like, sing-songs it back as a way to, like, test the reception of the phone.
Yeah. And it turns out that they tried to pull this prank on like one of the most obnoxious, preppy white financiers in the great state of Georgia.
Yeah, and Finley finds the address, and he's like, "Fuck," because it's a local address and, like, it had to be someone in town,
Yeah.
and Jack's like, "I don't have a mobile phone," like,
Yeah. What about this
so
drifter lifestyle? Do you not understand, dog? I don't
yeah,
have shit.
yeah. But I love that he's both still being held and people and, like, tried essentially by the people working at the police station, but he's also providing, like, free advice
Yeah.
and, like, free investigative services for them at
Yeah,
the
he's
same time.
definitely consulting for the police department. They just don't
Yeah,
know it and they're not paying him.
yeah, and they're keeping him in a cell, and they're like, "We can't let you go. Your information's too valuable."
And while they go out to go arrest Hubble, they throw Reacher back into his little cell and like slam the door shut and
Mhm.
with its like a little electric locks. And I made a note that Reacher is so unbothered by being arrested like this that he's pondering how electric locks work without power.
Yeah.
Because he as soon as they throw him in and like electrically lock the gate door, he's just like, "Man, how does that work? Like what happens if the power goes out? Do they have a way to open it manually or like are the people just stuck in here forever?" They have to have a way to open these manually. Like that's wild. It's hmm.
Yeah, he just has, like, shower thoughts.
Yeah.
And then one of my favorite things that he does is, like, when he just retreats into his mind's eye and listens to his favorite music in his head,
Yeah.
he's like, "The best stereo in the world is free, the one
That's
in your head."
the most boomer thing. Where they're just like, "You get the best songs up here, Sonny."
Yeah, he's just he can, like, play the whole song, he's like he can change the key and the pace and the volume in
Yeah.
his head.
I can listen to it as loud as I want. I'm like, you really can't.
Maybe he's, like, a little bit of a savant, though, and, like, maybe that's one of his little special savant powers.
Like, I like to think I've got a pretty good imagination, but I can't listen to music just by going, like, turning my radio dial in my brain, like, to find the right like, that's not real.
He's probably someone who's just never experienced a really good pair of headphones, because once you
True.
can actually control the, like, volume and pace, like, and hear the music as it's playing, not just in your head,
Yeah.
it's a whole other world. But then he starts, like, daydreaming about the nice lady who
Right.
took his photos. He's like,
Roscoe.
yeah, she has a certain vitality to her. Okay, okay, but then he goes off about, like, how she looks like a hot dentist's nurse, and he's like, "Oh boy, if dentist nurses look like her, maybe I woulda gone to get my teeth cleaned more often."
Yeah.
It's just like,
It's very,
"Stop.
very
Please
boomer.
stop it right now."
Like,
That's
it's,
literally, like, what boomers say to people like, girls my age. Like,
yeah.
it's
Oh,
like,
if
it
I,
just
if
gave me such an ick.
If girls my age looked like you, I'd be a very happy man.
No.
Please leave.
And yeah, and then she comes in, and I think she's giving him coffee, right? And
Yes.
she looks at him, she's like, "Oh, you've got nice eyes, you couldn't possibly be a deviant."
Yeah. She's like, you couldn't have done it because you've got nice eyes. And he goes, okay, well then what do criminals' eyes look like then? And
Yeah.
she's like, I
She's
don't
like
know, just not yours.
yeah, and then she winks at him, and he's gonna remember that wink until the day he dies,
Yeah, he's
because
real
he
caught
thinks
up on
about
that.
it he thinks about it at least thrice more in
Yeah.
this group of chapters.
It's very much like the, the like Dumb and Dumber meme where they're like, so you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah. That's what happens between now and the time he sees her again. He,
Yeah.
like, breaks apart every little piece of body language he got from her, and he's like, "She wouldn't have winked if she wasn't actually interested, right?"
Yeah. But anyway, they bring in this Hubble guy who looks exactly like you would imagine. Like,
Mhm.
even Reacher makes a comment about how he's like, he looks exactly like I imagined he would. And if I can't see his feet from behind this counter, but I imagine there are boat shoes attached to them.
Yeah.
And he's not wearing socks with them.
Yeah, exactly. Like, white sweater tied around his shoulders,
Yeah.
friendly rich guy vibes.
And he's pissed. Like, he comes in like the inconvenienced rich guy.
Yeah.
He's like, this is outrageous. You can't do this to me. Do you know who I am? And then they
Mhm.
take him into one of the interrogation rooms. And there's quite a ruckus in that
Mhm.
room. And then he comes out looking like a beaten dog.
That's right. And I think this is around the same time where Jack asks to go to the bathroom, and they're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, just, like, don't try and escape or anything, haha." And he's like he is thinking to himself how, like, they're severely underestimating him because he's a walking lethal weapon
Right.
and a
He,
highly trained
yeah.
killer, which he is, but and, like, it's all true, but he's just like,
Yeah.
"Well,
And
I
like,
won't test it now."
that kind of, that bothered me because in that same sort of sentence where he's talking about how much of a killer he is, he says it way better than all of the ways he said it before, where he was like, they're underestimating me because if I wanted to escape, nothing could hold me here. And then he talks about how they, when he was military police, he kind of does the same job as these cops, but the only difference is that everyone that he pursues is a trained killer.
Mhm,
So he's got kind of a leg up on these podunk cops who bring in fucking Johnny Two Shoes over here.
mhm.
I'm like, that's a way better way to say it than they're underestimating me because I'm so tough.
Yeah, I'm a walking lethal weapon.
Like, saying we're the same, but also everyone I chased was a trained killer,
Yeah,
way
that's enough.
cooler.
Mhm.
Uh, and we also find out that Hubble knows what pluribus means, because that's what turns him into, like, I want to see your manager, into, I'll confess.
Yeah, total meltdown. And, but apparently he'd said nothing for 40 calendar minutes.
Yeah, which
He
is wild.
just sat that's so many minutes.
That's way too
He
long.
sat there having, like, just a total nervous breakdown without saying anything for almost an hour.
Yeah.
How do you just sit there with someone expecting something from you and saying nothing for that long? Like, I even 10 would feel like an eternity.
Yeah, especially if they're just sitting there. Because later he Hubble is describing it as he used that time to, like, think. And I was like, I can get a lot of thinking done in seconds, but
Yeah. How much did you need to plan out that it took 40 minutes?
yeah. Like, he
Like,
was planning out the next 80 years.
yeah, that's way too long. But kind of a power move at the same time to just
Yeah.
be able to sit there for 40 minutes. But I
But
think they're, like, counting down to the prison bus showing up at this point.
yeah, because the caveat was they're like, well, we aren't going to get your, the go ahead on your alibi until Monday. So you're
Mhm.
heading to the penitentiary for the weekend. And Jack is like, inconvenient, but okay.
Yeah. He's not really upset about it at all.
But Hubble gets to go with him. So they stick them both in this prison van, shove them off to the state penitentiary.
Right, because Hubble confessed to the murder.
Right.
And then so Finley's like, "Well, you convinced me there were 3 guys, so now I got 2 of them."
Right.
Even though neither one of their they have no motive. Both of their alibis check out. Hubble was at a party all night and has eyewitnesses of him leaving at 2 AM.
Yeah, and
He's like, "I did it."
one of those eyewitnesses to him not being able to commit a murder he just confessed to is one of the cops at that station because they
Mhm.
drove him home from the party at
That's
midnight.
right. Yeah.
But they go to this prison and they don't get prison jumpsuits because they're just going to be going to the holding floor, which apparently is where they stick all of the people who are just like sitting overnight waiting for trial or something.
Yeah, like the Weekenders.
Yeah, I mean, around these parts, if you're waiting for trial, they put you in a prison jumpsuit
Mhm.
because they're not going to keep. Because, from the time that you get caught to your trial date is usually like anywhere from 6 to 8 months.
Yeah,
So
it seems
you're going to
weird
be
that
in
they would.
prison for that whole time.
Mhm. Like, it just seems like as a rule, you're not allowed to, like, wear your own clothes in jail.
Yeah,
Like,
but
it just seems
apparently
weird.
they were going to be stuck on this special floor where they just kept people who were waiting.
Yeah. You can
Except
explore.
they get shown to their cell by Spidey,
Spivey, I think.
Spivey,
Yeah.
who's the deputy warden,
Yeah.
because the warden is like on vacation or something.
Mhm.
And he's like, "Well, you just stay here for now, and then we'll get you sorted out and out of here as soon as we can."
Mhm.
And Hubble is a pathetic, like whimpering piece of garbage. Reacher has no patience for.
No. He just retreats into his mind's eye again and
Yeah,
decides to, like, go visit Jamaica in his mind with the
yeah,
pretty
with
cop
Roscoe.
lady from before. Yeah. He's like, "Maybe I'll just go to Jamaica and get high every day and, like, do whatever Jamaica people do." And then he starts thinking about, like, how like, her uniform shirt and how, like, crisp it was, and he's like, "Oh, well, in Jamaica, like, she probably wouldn't be able to wear a shirt, and that's
Yeah,
okay too."
uh,
And he starts overanalyzing the wink that she gives him to death.
yeah.
He's like, "It's gotta mean something."
But what brings him out of his little Jamaican reverie is this old janitor who the narrator really gets into the
He fully commits.
because they're in Georgia. It's this ancient black dude who's been in this
Mhm.
prison for like 50 years. And Reacher's like, "How long have you been in here?" And he's like, "I've been in here since the dinosaurs roamed." I've been in here since like he has got 3 different comparisons and all of them are great.
Yeah. And, like, the laugh he does for him is like,
Yeah.
and he does that before every line with this guy, and I was howling.
But
It was a
he's
delight.
talking to him and he's like, "How come y'all in your regular clothes?" And he's like, "Cuz the holding floor, you know, we don't they don't make us change into prison uniforms." And he goes, "What? Okay." And he's like, "Why do you say it like that?" And he goes, "This ain't the holding floor. This is where they keep the murderers." And then
Yeah.
that's when Jack kind of realizes that they are not where they should be, and they've been put in with all of the like worst of the worst.
Mhm. And then he starts thinking about, like, oh, he when he talks about, like, this one of the cases he worked where this, like, army recruit went AWOL because of, like, a religious thing, and then they caught him, threw him in
Oh
jail,
yeah,
and he lasted 1 night because he was raped 50 times,
yeah.
and then the autopsy found a pint of semen in his stomach. I
The Wild Night.
That made me, like, visibly nauseous when I heard it. Just the way just describing it in terms of, like, drinking measurements, bye.
Yeah. No, thank you. Well, as if on cue, after he tells this story, uh, a gang of ne'er do wells turn up,
Mhm.
and because Jack is up on the top bunk, he's got the full like I'm just doing my time posture.
Yeah.
Uh, these this gang comes in who call themselves the Red Boys,
Yeah.
and they start picking on Hubble, and they're like, "Give me your sweater, white boy." And they take his
Right.
sweater, like, "Give me your glasses, white boy." And then they smash him, and then they try and get him to suck the leader's dick or whatever.
Yeah, they're like, unzip him with your teeth."
Yeah. And that's when Reacher's like, "Oh god, all right, that's enough." And Reacher's like, "Look, man, I'll give you 2 options here. Like, you can leave of your own accord, or your boys can drag you away. Those are the only 2 options in this scenario."
Mhm.
And they're like, "Okay, dude, who are you?" And he goes, "I'll give you to the count of 3 to
Yeah.
make your choice." And before he even gets to, like, he does the, 1 while the gang leader is still talking shit. And then before Reacher gets to 3, he headbutts him so hard that he's just like down for the count.
Mhm.
Smashes his face in. And the rest of the gang is like completely does whatever Reacher says. Because after that, he's like, "Give me that sweater." And they like pick it up and like, "Oh, here you go."
Yeah.
And then he like throws it over his shoulder. And then he's like, "Give me those glasses." And they pick
Yeah.
up the broken glasses and hand them to Reacher. And he's like, "These are broken. Give me yours." And they like take off the glass, like, "Here you go, sir."
I'm so sorry.
And then he's like, "Now get the fuck out of here." And they all like scurry away. And I'm like, that's the
Yeah.
raddest shit. Like, he goes full, like, without even thinking about it, goes full alpha male.
Mhm.
Or, or whatever. No, it is alpha male, not whatever designation that incels have invented to make themselves feel better.
It's
That's
been
not a beta.
co-opted in a really shitty way.
Well, I've heard Sigma, and I'm like, that's not real. That's not a
They've been
designation.
reading They've been reading too many, like, werewolf porn fan fictions at that point. I think that's really telling,
Yeah.
actually,
Stigma
of
to me
them.
just sounds like something that people who don't want to be betas call themselves because they know they're not alphas.
So I'm like an outlier, I can't be controlled.
I'm a
I'm like a
lone
wild
wolf.
card. Yeah, I'm, like,
Okay,
part of the
whatever, dude.
pack, but, like, I do my own thing at the same time too, so you really can't boss me around and tell me what to do.
Okay. And then after that confrontation, Hubble opens up,
Mhm.
much to the chagrin of Reacher.
Well, he kinda wants to know, I think.
He
He's
he
like, "What
kind
did
of
you
does,
do?"
but when Hubble starts talking, Reacher's like, "Oh no, this is way more than I asked for." Like
Yeah,
I wasn't asking for like your family tree, amigo.
yeah, he just wants the facts, and he's
And he never
like,
really gets them either.
no, all we find out is that he's being, like, threatened or blackmailed, and he's like, "If I ever tell anybody what's happening, they said they'd break into my house and
Yeah,
nail me to the wall and, like, cut off my balls and then make my wife eat them, and then they'd, like, cut my kids up,
yeah.
and
And
they'd make our kids watch us die," like,
this whole time,
and
Reacher's like,
Reacher's like,
"Get to the point."
"Stop." Yeah, "What are you being blackmailed about?"
And I think that's when we find out that the guy who was murdered was a private investigator that Hubble
Mhm.
hired by
Yeah, to
this
get him
like
out of.
this group. And
Mhm.
for whatever reason, Hubble put him in touch with one of the people from this group, and then that's when he ends up dead. I'm like, okay, doesn't take a rocket
Yeah.
scientist to figure out what happened there. But Reacher's like, okay, well, you've talked far too much, so I'm gonna go splash some water on my face. And he heads down to like the showers or the washroom, bathroom, the communal bathroom,
Mhm.
and Hubble comes with him because he's gone full bitch.
Yeah, he's so scared. He's like, "Huh, you can't leave me alone."
Yeah. And then the Aryan Brotherhood turn up and like they decide on Reacher because they look at both Reacher and Hubble and they're like, it's that one. Like they had gotten a description of somebody
Yeah.
and they were putting the face to the description.
Yeah, that's right.
And then they usher Hubble out of the bathroom, and then Reacher proceeds to ruin the lives of four men.
Yeah.
I think he kicks one of them in the balls as hard as possible.
Yeah. He almost pulls someone's eye out.
He does pull someone's eye out. He like
Oh, yeah,
gouges it
he
out with his thumb.
does. That's right.
He
Scoops it right out.
he breaks a man's larynx.
So hard that the man dies.
Eventually, he dies. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think he just beats the hell out of another one.
Yeah.
But like
Oh,
they,
yeah, he breaks, like, all the man like, one man's he
oh
breaks all
yeah,
of his, like, fingers
the
because he's
guy
being
the
strangled.
guy who's tried to choke him, he just like starts
He's
breaking
just like,
fingers like it's popping tabs on his soda can.
yeah.
He, man, I love the way Jack Reacher fights because it's so filthy.
Mhm.
There's no honor in it because he's like, I want this fight to be over as quickly as possible. So
Yep.
you're getting kicked in the nuts. I'm taking your eyeballs. I'll break your throat if I have to.
Yeah.
uh, but then the red boys turn back. They're like, we'll take credit for it.
Yeah, because like, all these sirens start going off and shit,
Yeah,
and so they have to, like, make a swift exit, and the red boys are like, "We did it!"
yeah. And then Reacher starts. He starts
I
kind
think
of like puzzling out how this could have happened.
yeah, like, Spivey shows up and, like, runs to put them on the 3rd floor where they should have been the whole time, so they're, like,
Right.
finally safe from all the murderers.
Yeah. And he's like, okay. So if he knows that we weren't where we were supposed to be, that means he put us there on purpose, which means
Right.
that those Aryan dudes were there for us.
Mhm.
Which means if that guy dies, I'm free and clear because there's no way I was supposed to be there, so there was no way I could have been there.
Yeah, there's, like, all the paperwork says that they were where they should have been the whole time.
Yeah, and he's like, but why did they want me dead?
Mhm.
And then before he can even finish his thoughts, they're like, you're getting out. You boys
That's
are
right.
going home.
Yeah, and I think we get a little bit more information from Hubble about what exactly he was involved with. Like, he
Yeah,
talks about how he was being blackmailed by some unknown individuals for some unknown reason. But he's like, it's bigger than anything you've ever heard about to Jack. And
yeah.
Jack's like, how many people are involved? He's like,
Well,
10 at
10?
least. Jack's like, it
Can't be
doesn't
that
sound
big.
very big. Yeah. But apparently it's a very, like, time-sensitive scandal, and, like, after next Sunday, everything will be fine,
Yeah,
and he's, like, only in danger until next Sunday, and Jack's like, "Did you call your wife? Like, what did you tell your wife?" He's like, "Oh, nothing, like, it'll be fine." He's like, "Well, isn't she gonna be, like, worried that you're not at home, like, vacuuming your pool or whatever?" And he's like, "Oh, she'll just make up something." But then they get out of prison.
yeah. And Roscoe, the pretty lady officer, is there to pick up Jack,
In her crisp uniform. Oh, no, she's not wearing her crisp uniform
but
shirt.
she is in an unmarked police car.
That's right.
And he decides he wants to. Oh, like he wants food or.
Yeah, he wants to take her out to lunch before he skips town and goes to Jamaica because he's like, "I really
Right,
like this girl, and I don't want to say goodbye yet, so I'll stick around for a lunch." And
right.
they're driving to lunch, and she's telling him about how her and one other dude worked all weekend to prove that, like, to check out his alibi, to prove that he was innocent,
Yeah,
and, like, she goes into a lot of detail about the length of time it takes to process somebody's fingerprints to show that they're who they say they are, like, in the system that they're
right.
using, and how
It's
it took,
like
like yeah.
it was like a tiered system. Like if you've got a bunch of priors, you pop up quick, but if you
Mhm.
don't, then it takes much longer for your name to
Right.
pop up. And they said there was like some incongruent, like something was off. Like Jack Reacher came up real quick.
Well, I think it took 14 hours to confirm Jack's prints were in the system, but it only took 6 hours to show that the dead guy wasn't in the system.
Right.
And they were like, "Why would that be?" Because the dead guy was just some person that Hubble was connected with to get
Yeah.
him out of, like, this blackmail situation, and he was gonna go like, Hubble was gonna go meet with the blackmailers not Hubble, sorry, the guy he hired was
Yeah.
meeting the blackmailers, and that's why he died? But we're trying to figure out now, like, who this guy was, because why would it have come through so quickly? But they're also like, "Well, it could have been a system error, too."
Yeah.
But there's something weird happening with that.
Yeah. And Reacher goes to like this old diner. I think the same one he was arrested from. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
to get
Okay.
himself coffee because he really needs it. And that's when we get introduced to like the wife of the guy who owned the warehouse that the man was killed in.
I think that's in chapter 9 because I didn't get that far.
Oh, you might be
Because I
right.
think the last thing that I got to was, like, them just going out for lunch, basically, and, like,
Well,
showing up at the place for lunch.
yeah, I think that might be the end of chapter 8 is when he's like, I want to take her to lunch.
Yeah.
And then I read a little bit more into chapter 9 where they don't go to lunch right away. She drops him off in town
Oh,
and then he wanders around for a bit and then she'll come back to have lunch with him. It's really weird. But
strange.
yeah, that just about covers everything we read so far.
Yeah.
Makes this kind of a short episode, but tough. I'm really enjoying this book so far already.
Yeah, me too. I'm liking it a lot. It's really easy. It's just so easy to listen to. The narrator's great to listen to.
Yeah.
It's very like you don't have to be paying super close attention. It's a nice book you can multitask with,
Yep.
which I think is a really good thing for an audiobook because unless like you're doing something else, it's hard to just sit and listen and give your full attention to something
Yeah.
and not feel burnt out of the book by like halfway through. So having like an activity that because like there's some books that I listen to and I can only do something totally mindless at the same time because there's a lot happening in the book and I just need to keep my hands busy so I don't like start daydreaming and
Yeah.
forget what I was reading. But this is a nice book for like I can be puttering around my house. I don't have to be like playing a game at the same time necessarily. Like I can go for a walk or I can like wash dishes or like do any other kind of like laundry folding chores that I need to do
Yeah.
and not like lose track of what's happening. So it's a
It's
great book
very
for
nice.
puttering around.
And I think a lot of the credit goes to the narrator. He's super
Mhm.
engaging.
Yeah, he really is. Because I don't want to tune his voice out. With some of the other narrators that we've had this year, like there's some voices that are really just not resonating with my molecules.
Yeah.
Like some like the woman who read Thorns and Roses was like so grating on my eardrums.
Yeah.
But he's just like this eccentric old dude. And it's a delight to listen to him read things.
Yeah. And 2 weeks from now, we will have the next date at 8 chapters.
Mhm.
Then 2 weeks after that, 8 more. And 2 weeks after that, probably more than 8 because the chapters divided up real weird this time.
Oh
But
yeah.
that's all we've got, boys. So, see you guys all next time.
Next year.
Next year, yeah. Hope everybody's holidays were alright. And we'll see you in the new year that's definitely going to be better than this one and not another shithole.
Definitely gonna be better.
See. Bye, everybody.
Farewell.
Bye.